When most people think leadership, they think about power, influence, status, and being the loudest person in the room. But Jesus completely flipped the idea upside down. He led with humility, conviction, service, discipline, and truth, and somehow remained both compassionate and uncompromising at the same time. And honestly, a lot of modern leadership culture teaches people how to build platforms and not build character. So, what does it actually mean to lead like Jesus in your workplace, your relationships, your family, or even in your personal life? In this episode, we're breaking down the difference between worldly leadership and biblical leadership and why Jesus did things the good way and it still challenges what we see today in modern culture. Welcome to Assured and Brazen. I'm your host, Kevin Gertillis. This podcast is about faith in real life and how to follow God in the middle of work, pressure, ambition, and uncertainty. If you're looking for clarity, conviction, and deeper walk with God in your everyday life, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking about what it actually means to lead like Jesus, not the cleaned up version, the real one. And I want to start with a story that is just as embarrassing as it is instructive. It involves a road trip that I went on, a GPS, and a very hungry girlfriend, as well as my ego. I was driving to Toronto with my girlfriend at the time. And now I need to put this in perspective for you because I need you to understand the full picture before I get into like what actually happened. And it was in the summer, the weather was hot, and she needed to use the bathroom. And she was hungry. If you've ever been in a car with someone who needs the bathroom and is hungry, you already know. It's a specific kind of situation and a dangerous combination at that. The kind that turns a road trip into a negotiation that you didn't sign up for. And I was looking at the nearest rest stop on the GPS, trying to navigate the GPS and driving and talking. Just trying to do my best overall. And I remember missing the exit. And here's where I have to be honest with you about something. I have this thing sometimes where I think I know better than the GPS. I can't really explain it completely because it could be an ego thing. It could be, I feel like I'm better than the GPS, like in my internal roadmap, I guess. But whatever it is, I missed the exit. And instead of correcting the situation, correcting course, I just kept on driving, trying to, play it off, trying to, I'll get the next one, that kind of thing, right? If I stayed confident enough, eventually, I would find another rest stop. But her bladder was not having it that day. And it didn't agree with me, of course. And she noticed the exit. And now I have a angry woman next to me, to say the least. She's hot, she's hungry, and she's in need of the bathroom. And if you've ever been in a situation like that, you know where I'm coming from. She's telling me with passionate words, I should say, that I wasn't being attentive, and she was right. And in that moment, I had two options that I could do. I could get defensive, make an excuse. I could explain why the exit wasn't clearly marked, why the GPS was being unreasonable with me, why any excuse that I could think of at the time that I would have missed the exit, right? Just to protect my sanity or my ego, right? It's really easy to shift the blame on others or get frustrated when you're the one in charge of the leading, right? Or I could do the hard thing, which is just apologize and own the mistake. Stop trying to correct the, continuing going in the wrong direction and just pull over and find the nearest rest stop and, just take care of what she actually needed at that time. I chose option two. Eventually, it took me a minute, I won't lie to you, but here's what I learned in the car, in the heat with the woman who had every right to be irritated with me. When you're a leader, taking the blame is part of the job. You can make excuses or you can make results. You cannot always do both. And real leadership, the kind that Jesus modeled, is not the ability to miss an exit. It's what you do when you do. It's whether you protect your pride or protect the people in the car with you. I think about that drive sometimes, what it means to lead as a man of God in this season of my life, because the pressure is real. The expectations are loud, and the temptation to drive past an exit and pretend you didn't know where you're going, rather than admitting you missed it and correcting the course. That temptation doesn't go away just because you're older or more experienced. It just shows up in bigger cars with higher stakes and more people depending on where you end up. Leading like Jesus means being secure in yourself enough to correct it now, saying, I missed the exit. Let's go where we need to go. In John 13, there's this very interesting moment that we get to see like a glimpse of. It's the moment of Jesus at the Last Supper. He knows what's coming, right? He knows he's about to be betrayed. He knows he's going to get arrested, and he knows the cross is coming. He knows Judas is about to sell him out, and he knows Peter's about to deny him 3 times. He knows his disciples are about to scatter. And what does he do in that moment? If we go to verse 4, he gets up from the table. He takes off his outer clothing, the wraps, the towels out, and everything like that around his waist. He pours water into a basin and he starts to wash his disciples' feet. And I want to put that in the context for like a quick sec, because we probably heard the story a million times, and maybe the shock's kind of like worn off a bit, right? But you're about to go through a traumatic experience and you're washing feet, something that's like done by the lowest servant in the household. And it's not the cleanliest thing to do, right? I mean, these people walk around with sandals, for God's sakes. And who knows what their foot hygiene was like back then. But all that to say was that like it was done by the slave, and never a Hebrew slave, because that was considered too good to be done by Hebrew hands. So they gave it to the Gentiles, which is someone who's not Hebrew at the time. And Jesus, Son of God, creator of the universe, the name who one day every knee bowed. He gets down on his knees and did the job that nobody wants to do. He didn't give it to someone else. He didn't announce it. He just did it. And he looked up at his disciples, the students, his followers, people who called him Lord, teacher, all these great and wonderful names. And he says in, I think it was verse 14, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should wash one another's feet. And I have set an example that you should do what I have done for you. And this is like the foundation of everything. This is what separates the leadership of Jesus from every other leader in the world today. Most leaders don't want to get their hands dirty when it comes to, simple things. Yeah, sure, they'll pick up some dirt for a new construction site being built that they know they spent tax dollars on, but they won't serve the public in a way that benefits everyone. So if we look at the Jesus model, it says the higher you go, the lower you stoop. If we look at Matthew 20:28, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. In Mark 10:42-45, it says, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave to all. The phrase is everything. Jesus was drawing a contrast between leadership his followers will practice and the leadership the world practices. They're not the same thing. They're not supposed to be the same thing. So what does servant leadership actually look like in real life, not just in theory? It looks like putting people before whatever processes that you're doing. The servant leader asks, what does this person need to succeed? Not just, what does this project need to ship? People are not resources to be deployed. They're image bearers to be developed. It looks like sometimes taking the unglamorous work seriously. Jesus washed feet, right? What's your equivalent? The leader doesn't show up for the visible high status moments every time. They show up for the meetings that nobody wants to run, the problems nobody wants to own, and the people nobody else is investing in. It looks like making other people better. The best measure of leadership is not your own output. It's the output of the people around you. Are the people you lead growing? Are they more capable, more confident, more themselves because of how you lead them? That's the question. It looks like leading from security, not fear. The idea about Jesus washing feet is unique. He could only do it because he knew exactly who he was. John 3, verse 13 says, Jesus knew the Father, but put all things under his power. And he had come from God and was returning to God. And then he picked up the towel. His security and his identity freed him to serve without losing dignity. This is the trap insecure leaders fall into. They can't serve because service feels like weakness. They can't lift others up because they're afraid of being diminished. But Jesus shows us that the most secure position in the room is always the one that is most free to serve. That's the towel and the basin. Now, here's where it gets tricky, because servant leadership is sometimes misread as spineless leadership, as never making hard calls or being so focused on how people feel when they never really led anywhere. That's not what Jesus modeled. Not even close. Jesus was the most authoritative person in any room he walked into. And we know this because if we go to Matthew 7:28-29, it says that when he finished the sermon on the mountain, the crowds were amazed because he taught as one who had authority, not as their teachers of the law. He called out the Pharisees publicly and directly. He turned over tables in the temple and he rebuked storms. He told his disciples hard truth they didn't want to hear. He held a consistent direction, even when the crowds wanted him to go a different way. Jesus had authority, enormous, undeniable authority. He just didn't use it to dominate. He used it to serve the mission that he was on and to protect the people. That's the difference, the distinction, I would say, that authority shows us versus authoritarianism. Authoritarianism uses power to control people. Genuine authority uses power to serve people and advance a purpose bigger than yourself. If we go to Philippians 2, verse 3-8, shows us the posture. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain concern. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of the others. In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in every nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing. Do not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. That's the most crazy statement about power in the entire Bible. Jesus had all the power, all of it, and he chose not to leverage it for himself. He used it for others, whether it was healing, whether it was walking on water. It was endless, and he didn't use it for himself. He used it for other people. So what is authority without authoritarianism? So what does authority without authoritarianism look like? It means making decisions clearly and without apology. Leaders still make decisions, whether you're a leader or a servant leader. They still set the direction. They still say, this is what we're doing, and this is why. What changes is the process and the posture. They gather input, they listen, they consider the people affected, and then they lead. Indecisiveness is not humility. It's abdication. It means protecting your people, not just your position. The authoritarian leader uses their position to shield themselves. The Jesus-style leader uses their position to shield the people under their care. When pressure comes from above, which it will for sure, they absorb it rather than passing it down. When someone on their team is being treated unfairly, they say something. It means telling the truth about where things stand. Jesus never managed the disciples' expectations by telling them what they want to hear. He told them the truth. He even went as far as, even when they didn't receive it well, good leaders do the same. They don't give you false comfort, and false comfort is not kindness. Clarity is kindness. It means your authority is moral and not just positional. The most powerful leaders, the ones that actually follow rather than just comply with character, lead from character, from consistency, from the trust built through 100 small moments of doing the right thing when nobody was watching. That's what moral authority is. And it can't be appointed. It can't be given. It has to be earned. If we go to Luke chapter 22, verse 26, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. The one who rules like the one who serves. Both things are the same. That's the tension Jesus holds, and the tension great leaders have to learn to hold on to. This is the part of leadership that most people get wrong in one of two directions. Either they avoid accountability entirely because it's uncomfortable, because they don't want the conflict, because they'd rather be liked than respected. And their teams start to drift, and the team standards start to erode. The people who are trying hard start to resent the people who aren't. And the leader wonders why nothing's working. Or they use accountability as a weapon, as a way to assert dominance, humiliate any underperformers for sure, and create a culture of fear that masquerades as high standards. Jesus modeled a third way, and it's the hardest of the three. Think about Peter. Jesus knew Peter was going to reject him 3 times, and he told him directly before the morning that you will deny me 3 times. He didn't soften it. He didn't protect Peter from the truth about himself. But then after the resurrection in John 21, Jesus finds Peter on the beach, and Peter, who denied him, who ran, Peter, who had gone back to fishing because he probably assumed he disqualified himself from everything that Jesus was teaching. And Jesus doesn't shame him, doesn't make an example out of him. He doesn't bring up the denial in front of the other disciples. He pulls him aside and asks him the same question 3 times. Do you love me? And then reinstates him. Feed my sheep. So 3 times he rejected him. 3 times. Now, Jesus meets the failure at its exact depth and covers it completely. That is what accountability looks like when it's motivated by love rather than control. Practicality. Here's what it means for leaders. Hold the standard clearly before the failure happens. Accountability without clarity is just punishment. People need to know what is expected before they can be held to it. Now, Jesus was never ambiguous about what he was calling his disciples to do. It was equally clear, and he addresses the failure privately and specifically, not in front of the team, not as a general comment designed to send a message to everyone, directly, specifically, and privately. Now, in Matthew 18, it applies here as well. If we go to the person, name what happened, give them the opportunity to respond. We separate the person from the performance. You can hold someone accountable for what they did without defining them by it. Peter's failure was real. Jesus never pretended it wasn't. But Peter's identity was not the one who denied Jesus. His identity was the rock on which the church would be built. Follow up. Accountability that ends with the conversation is incomplete. The leader who holds someone accountable and then invests in their recovery, their healing, their state of mind, who checks in, who offers support, who celebrates turnaround, that's the leader that people will run through walls for. Be accountable for yourself. This is one that most leaders skip. And I think Jesus modeled this probably the best of everyone. And he didn't ask his disciples to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself. The leader who holds others to standards, they don't hold themselves. That's accountability as love. Let's talk about something that leaders almost never talk about honestly, failure. Because here's the reality. If you've led long enough, you will make mistakes. And you will make the wrong call. You will say the thing you didn't have to say, or it didn't have to be said. You'll miss something important, and you'll let someone down. You will at some point fail the people who were trusting you. Question is not whether it will happen. It's what you do when it does. The world's leadership model handles failure in one of 2 ways. Denial, pretend it didn't happen, reframe it, spin it, whatever. Never admit any fault, because admitting fault is admitting weakness. Or deflection. Find someone else to blame. Make it about external circumstances and protect your image in the expense of your integrity. Neither of those is the Jesus model. Jesus never sinned, so he never had to own personal moral failure. But look at how he responded when his mission appeared from the outside to be failing. In Gethsemane, he didn't pretend, he didn't spin, he said, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." He was honest about what he was experiencing. He brought it to the Father. He stayed in it rather than running from it. And look at how he responded to his disciples' failures. He didn't pretend Peter's rejection of him didn't happen. He didn't pretend Thomas's doubt didn't happen. He didn't pretend the disciples falling asleep in the garden of Gethsemane didn't happen. He named reality clearly, and he kept leading. Here's what owning your mistakes looks like as a leader. Say the words, not mistakes were made. If anyone was hurt by my actions, say I was wrong. I made the wrong call. I should have defined that differently. I'm sorry. The specific, direct, first person apology is the beginning of restored trust, not the end of your credibility. Don't explain before you apologize. The moment you start explaining before you fully owned it, the explanation sounds like an excuse. Own it completely first. Then, if context is genuinely helpful, offer it. Not as a defense, as information. Make it right where you can. An apology without changing behavior is just noise. What can you actually do differently? What commitment can you make that the people affected can hold you to? That's the follow through that turns an apology into a turning point. Let failure teach you publicly. One of the most important things a leader can do is say, I got this wrong. And here's what happened. It does two things at the same time. It models intellectual humility, and it gives permission to the people around you to learn from their own failures without shame. The leader who never admits to learning anything has created an environment where nobody can afford to fail. And an environment where nobody can afford to fail is an environment where nobody will take risks. And an environment where nobody will take risks is always dead. It just doesn't know yet. Stay in the room. Leadership after failure requires presence. And the temptation when you've made a mistake, especially a public mistake, is to go into hiding or withdraw, to go quiet, go silent, to avoid the people you let down. Do the opposite and show up, stay engaged. Let your continued presence say, I'm not abandoning ship, even when this is hard. I want to come back to where we started because I know some of you have been listening to this whole episode thinking, this is great, but I'm not a leader. I don't have a team around me. I don't have direct people that I report to or people that report to me. It doesn't really apply to me, right? And I want to respectfully and directly challenge that. Leadership is not a position, it's a posture. If we look at the life of Jesus, he spent vast majority of his ministry with no official title, no institutional position or anything like that, no organizational authority. The religious establishment, if you recall, didn't even recognize him as a leader. Only his disciples did, right? Master, leader, teacher, that's what they called him, but the Pharisees did not call him that. And he had no salary, he had no office, no HR department, and he changed the world because influence, real, lasting, meaningful influence. It's never been about his title. It was about his character. And it's about how you show up. It's about the quality of your presence in any room you walk into. If we go to Luke 22, verse 26, the greatest among you should be like the youngest. The youngest was the one with the least status, the least authority, and the least claim to being heard. And yet is the person Jesus says is the greatest in the kingdom. So what does influence without a title look like? It looks like being the most reliable person in the room. The person who does what they say they'll do every time without being reminded. And reliability is one of the most underrated forms of influence. People follow the person they can count on, regardless of their title. And it looks like being genuinely curious about other people. A person who asks good questions and actually listens to the answers has more influence than the person who talks the most. Interest has this like magnetic effect on people. Most people are so focused on being interesting that they forget to be interested. Be interested. It looks like speaking up when something needs to be said, not loudly, not aggressively, but consistently. The person who names the thing in the room that everyone else is pretending isn't there, carefully, respectfully, at the right moment, becomes the person people look to when things get complicated. It looks like investing in people who can't give you anything back. The junior colleague, the overlooked team member, the person who nobody else is mentoring. Influence built on investment in people who can't immediately reciprocate is the purest kind because It's clearly not transactional. It looks like being the same person in every room. Consistent character across contexts is the most rarest and most powerful things a person can have. The same integrity at home as at work. The same values in the hard meeting as in the easiest one. The same Jesus following self on Sunday morning and on Tuesday afternoon, and when everything is going wrong. You don't need a title to do any of these things. That is influence without a title. That is leading like Jesus. Let me give you the main points of today's podcast of Jesus-style leadership in all in one place, because we covered a lot today, right? Because this has been a pretty deep episode, I'd say, and you deserve to walk away with something you can actually see and use, right? So we talked about servant leadership, the towel and the basin. The higher you go, the lower you stoop. Not because you have to, but because we're secure enough in who God made you to be, that you don't need the position to prove anything. Pick up the towel. Authority without authoritarianism. Lead with strength and with clarity and direction. And let it always be in service of people and on purpose, never in service of your own ego or position. The one who rules like the one who serves. Accountability as love. Hold the standard, name the failure, and address it privately. Separate the person from the performance. Invest in recovery and be accountable for yourself. Do it because you believe in people more than you fear awkwardness. The fourth one, leading through failure. Say the words, own it fully, make it right. Let it teach you, whether publicly or privately, and always be willing to stay in the room. The leader who tells the truth about their own failures is the leader people trust with their own lives. Influence without a title. Be reliable, relatable, be curious, speak up, and invest in people who can't pay you back. Be the same person in every room you attend. And you don't need a title to lead. You need a towel at best. And underneath all 5 of these points, one thing, the thing that makes all of it possible, I want to refer you guys to Philippians 2. The humility of Christ, the willingness to lay down what you could leverage, tempting yourself of what you could hold on to choose the posture of a servant when you could choose the posture of a king. That is the leadership that changes things. That is the leadership that the world's desperately short of. And that is the leadership that every single person listening to this episode, with a title or without one, is capable of. I want to close with something I think Jesus would want every leader listening to this to hear. You're going to get this wrong sometimes. You're going to have days where you lead from fear instead of from love. Days where you protect yourself instead of your people. Days where you avoid the hard conversation. Like you want to take the credit, miss the need, or lose the plot entirely. And on those days, the model still holds, because the Jesus we've been studying today is not just a leadership framework. He's a savior. He's not just showing you how to lead. He's leading you right now through every failure, every fear, every moment, where you look in the mirror and wonder if you have what it takes. He knows what it takes. He knows what it is to carry the weight of people who are depending on you. He knows what it is to be misunderstood by the people closest to you. He knows what it is to make decisions in the dark without full information, to stay the course, even when everything in you wants to give up, to love people who will let you down. He knows, and he leads you even as he teaches you to lead others. That's it. That's the whole thing. Lead from the level of the people with a towel on your hand, the truth in your mouth, and love as your motive, and Jesus as your model. The world doesn't need more bosses. It needs more servants. It needs more leaders who have been with Jesus long enough that they start to look like it. Be one of those. Now that's a wrap for this episode of Assured and Brazen, our probably longest or maybe most comprehensive episode yet. And if this one stirred something in you about how you lead at work, at home, in your community, I want to challenge you to pick up one of the 5 points that we covered today and work on it this week. Just one intentionally. Share this episode with a leader in your life who needs it. Leave a review if you haven't. It genuinely helps more people find the show. And remember, you don't need a title. You need just a towel. Stay assured in who God is and be brazen enough to lead like Jesus. See you next episode.